Welcome back to PC-88 Paradise, the series where we take a close look at classic games for the NEC PC-88, the most popular Japanese PC series of the 1980s. Today we're looking at an extremely popular PC-88 title from 1988, which proves once again that Japanese PC gamers back then were total masochists. The game, which this Hardcore Gaming 101 article calls an infamously player-unfriendly RPG. It's Last Armageddon. And I want to thank Holloway Tape for writing this article, by the way. It has a lot of valuable info and helped prepare me for the game. Holloway Tape is also the ROM hacker from 46 Okumen, the group who translated the PC-98 games Rusty, 46 Okunen Monogatari, Armageddon, and CRW Metal Jacket. So thanks to them for all the work they do. Last Armageddon was the brainchild of Takiya Iijima, most known nowadays for his paper novels, as well as visual novels like the Apathy series. For Last Armageddon, he both designed the game and wrote the story. Ironically, this isn't the first game of his I've covered on the channel. After Last Armageddon, he designed and wrote the first Burai game, and he wrote the story for the second one. And though uncredited, according to this interview, he was producer of Al Shark up until it was nearly completed, but decided to resign due to creative differences. Oh well, by then he had also created his own development group called Pandora Box. But in his early outing, Last Armageddon, he dreamed up a post-apocalyptic hellscape where monsters duke it out with aliens to determine who will rule the world. Well, sounds like fun. And excuse me for a personal tangent, but I've always thought that this game was called Last Harmageddon due to the way it's written in Japanese. Katakana readers will notice that the word Armageddon actually begins with an H sound here, and this is apparently due to the original Hebrew the word comes from. And so it was usually written like Harmageddon in Japanese translations of the Bible and other uses like the title of this game. But when the 1998 movie Armageddon was released in Japan, they changed the way Armageddon is written in katakana to begin with an A sound like in English. And since then this has become the generally preferred way to write Armageddon in popular Japanese culture. Don't wanna close my eyes. Don't wanna forget the H, cause I'd miss that H. And I don't wanna miss a thing. Anyway, let's take a look at Last Harmageddon. On the cover, we've got this awesome illustration of all the monsters. And the back calls the game both the final RPG and the greatest RPG. So screw you, RPGs made after 1988. Inside, we first have a black and white manual which goes over how to start and play the game. And the color manual is a list of monsters, enemies, spells, equipment, etc. Next, we have a fold-out map of the game. The game itself is stored on 7 floppy disks. First, to watch the opening, we insert disks A and B before powering up. We're informed that this is Brain Gray's work of 1988. Back in the day, we had way cooler brain-themed video game companies, like Electro Brain. Brain Gray, I assume, must have something to do with gray matter. Anyway, they were a short-lived company that only released 3.5 different games before disbanding. I've always known them best for the PC Engine game Ephera and Giliora. That was a pretty decent one. The world could always use more 2-player action RPGs. But oh yeah, we were gonna watch the opening of Last Armageddon. It's the future, and humans are gone. Nobody knows why they died off. But from the depths of hell emerge the monsters, who quickly announce that now with the humans gone, the age of monsters has begun. But not so fast. Somebody shoots a hole straight through Skeleton's skull and blasts the guts right out of Minotaur. It's the aliens, who have come from light years away to make the Earth their 131st colony. To warn the others, Skeleton's eyeball crawls out and is carried back to the underground lair of the monsters by Gargoyle. Then the title logo gradually rises from the ground in epic fashion. Back at the monster's lair, Gargoyle uses Skeleton's eye like a projector to show the aliens to the other monsters. Gargoyle cries out in pain as worm-like creatures take control of his body, and through him, the aliens announce themselves to the monsters. They let them know that if they dare interfere with their conquest of the Earth, obliteration awaits. The other monsters just finish off the possessed Gargoyle with no hesitation. Now the monsters are pissed. Nobody fucks with them and their planet. But then the Earth begins to shake, and on the screen they see that a large stone tablet has landed outside. It has something written on it. He who returns peace to the Earth will become its new ruler. The monsters conclude that there must be some other entity out there trying to communicate with them. This requires investigation. It could be an opportunity to find out what happened to the Earth, and also why there is now an extra long day with treacherous weather on the first of every month. The monsters call this day the Crushing Day of Salvan. They decide to send out one representative from each of the 12 monster clans, but some of them can only survive on the surface at night, and others during the day. Still others like the Androsphinx and Golem can now only survive on the Crushing Day of Salvan. So they break up into 3 parties, one who will move during the night, another for the day, and another for the Salvan Day. The monsters who are inactive will take refuge within the Shaman's Pot, which the party will carry around. Okay, it's a plan. Watch out, you alien motherfuckers. The monsters are coming for you.
We're the Monster Squad. Since when? Since now.
It's a pretty epic and satisfying PC-88 opening. It may be only 7 minutes long compared to Burai's 37-minute opening sequence, but that's probably a good thing. Last Armageddon wastes no time and gets to the point. So now it invites us to enjoy the world of Last Armageddon. But first we have to insert discs C and D and reset the system. Those first 2 discs contained only the opening and ending sequence. So we can start a new game or continue. When we start, we first gotta make 3 parties. As mentioned earlier, some monsters can only be assigned to the day party, the night party, or the Salvan Day party, but the rest of the monsters can be placed anywhere. I don't want to screw this up, so I just used the suggested party arrangements in this walkthrough. You can also name each of the monsters whatever you like, but by default they're just their monster names like Orc, Dragon Newt, Giant Snake, Slime, etc. I'll just keep the default since that's less confusing. So I make my final decisions and finally, we're off. You move about the map, and when you encounter a battle, the monsters say that they've found some prey. So unlike other RPGs where you get attacked, here you are playing as monsters attacking the enemies. I love the don't give a fuck attitude of the monsters in this game, by the way. And if you don't like all my cussing in this video, sorry, but I'm just trying to reflect the attitude of the monsters here. First impressions, I'm not gonna lie, but this is kind of a shitty looking game. The overhead screen is decent by PC-88 standards, but this battle screen is not much to look at. Sure, the monster designs are cool, but animation? Who needs animation? And the music? While the bangy, clangy sound of the FM synth can be kind of cool in some of the tunes, if you're into that kind of thing like me, the arrangements here are overall not particularly good and can sound pretty thin. The case brags about Soundboard 2 support, but this has got to be the most hastily put together Soundboard 2 support ever. All they did was take the original 6 voices from the Soundboard 1 arrangements and move the 3 SSG channels over to FM. They didn't bother using stereo or any of the other sound channels at all. The end result does sound pretty FM heavy compared to a Soundboard 1 game if you're paying attention, but is overall pretty underwhelming. Still, the Soundboard 1 arrangements are noticeably even shittier in a side-by-side comparison. Since this PC-88 has a Soundboard 2 built in and it can't be disabled, I'll have to use an emulator for this comparison. The composition, though, is generally pretty good. The main composer was Koji Hayama, who composed the music for a lot of Messiah's games. Too bad the FM sound driver can't really do the compositions justice. While some are fine, others sound like an FM mess. The game has tons of different tunes though. Almost all of these visual sequences have their very own unique BGM, which is almost kind of a waste since you'll only hear them once in the game. But let's talk about how to play. You can turn on caps lock to bring up the time and date, and when the clock strikes 10 p.m., the music changes and the night party will take over until 10 the next morning. Returning to the monster underworld where you start the game revives your party, but it can only be used once per day, so you need to decide whether the day party or the night party gets to use it. On the map there are these stone tablets scattered about. Each gives a short hint about the fate of the world and what the monsters need to do.
Then what do monsters do?
Good question. I have the time of my life.
Press tab to bring up the system menu. Ding ding dong ding 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 dong ding ding dong ding dong. I apologize for not writing proper lyrics for this song. On this screen you can change the message speed to make the battles move a little faster and save and load your game. You only get one save slot, which is saved on Disk C, the disk which remains in the first drive throughout the game. Since you'll be constantly saving data to this disk, it was made deliberately without copy protection so that players could make backup copies. Unlike other RPGs of the time, you won't find any towns or shops on the map. When you win a battle, you'll be awarded some Jin, which are raw materials some of the monsters can use to create items and equipment. Press F2 to bring up the screen where you can do so, the same screen where you can use items and magic. Each of the function keys up to F5 brings up a different menu. By the way, the game lacks any gamepad support. I wanted to use this PC-88 keyboard emulator that I used in my Highlight video again, but unfortunately this thing has one weird limitation. You can't assign the trigger buttons to return, which is the only key you can use as confirm in Last Armageddon, so it's back to using my old keyboard contraption again. Guess I'm never gonna get away from this thing. For those who don't remember, this is a keyboard emulator for PC-98, attached to a PC-98 to USB keyboard converter, which is then attached to a USB to PC-88 keyboard converter. Trust me, it actually works great once you get it set up. And it's a good thing I did because I actually find the battle system in this game really awkward to control with the keyboard. All this toggling you have to do is way more comfortable on a gamepad. If they're gonna require you to use a keyboard, then they really should have taken advantage of it by making shortcut keys for each of these commands. That would have improved the game more than you can even imagine. So let's talk about this battle system. It has way too many commands. Getting rid of some of these could have really improved playability. This one, long-range weapons, is hardly ever used and totally unnecessary in my opinion. The undo command should also go. They could have just let you press cancel to undo your commands like in other games. And this one, which lets you turn off the battle animation, should really be in the system menu instead. As it is, you have to select this at the beginning of every battle, or suffer watching a whole turn with the animation on if you forget. What the hell? The battle system is both interesting and baffling at the same time. While the characters do have overall levels, individual stats are improved by performing actions. Using magic improves that character's magic ability, for instance. Toward the beginning of the game, I was actually having a great time watching my characters become a bit stronger with each battle. Unfortunately though, attack power seems to increase depending on how much damage your attacks deal, so the strongest characters just keep getting stronger. Unless you make a deliberate effort, there's no chance for the weaker characters to catch up. You'll most likely end up with a really unbalanced party by the end of the game. Most of the characters also have both magic and special techniques, some of which are almost game-breakingly powerful, while others practically useless. Magic uses MP of course, but weirdly special techniques are completely free to use. Another really weird quirk of Last Armageddon is that while characters are defending, they're literally invincible. Taking attacks while defending is how you raise your defense, so spamming defend is actually an advisable thing to do whenever you encounter new enemies who can deal damage. It's also a viable way to allow weaker characters to survive while the other characters take out the enemies. The biggest problem then is that you can't use the auto battle option when you need characters to defend. The auto battle, along with the animation off command, is the easiest way to make the battles go by quickly. It just keeps auto battling until you press cancel. And while you might think that auto battle would use some AI routine for the computer to decide what each character should do, all it does is just keep using regular attacks on the first enemy in line. A big advantage here though is that auto battle always attacks enemies who are actually there, whereas choosing to attack an enemy manually leaves you open to the Final Fantasy I issue, where characters will waste a turn trying to attack an enemy who's no longer there. Cause even if I draw the H, the sweetest H would never do, I'd still miss that H, and I don't wanna miss. So starting off, you do need to do a ton of grinding before you can do much of anything, but once your characters are on about level 4 or 5, you can take out these 4 alien camps nearby. Each of these just involves fighting one kinda hard battle against some aliens. You'll get a piece of an ID card from each one. And once you've assembled the card, you can use it to enter the alien spaceship nearby, which is a first-person dungeon. Unfortunately, the battles here are too hard, so you'll have to save this one for later. I did some leveling and way over-prepared myself for the actual first dungeon coming up. Once the characters reach level 10, their appearance will also change for the first time. Your characters are constantly changing in this game, making it even harder to keep track of who's who. At level 17, you can combine them with another monster's DNA. You choose one of 3 monsters to merge with, leading to tons of possible variations. The new monster will have the abilities of both previous monsters, so this is a chance to gain the most valuable ability of all, the ability to equip armor. That's right, most of the monsters in this game can't equip armor, and it's a huge disadvantage. And I should probably also be clear that even after these DNA merges occur, the monster you merged with is still there too, so it's not like 2 monsters literally become one. You're still left with 12 monsters at all times.
Damn, son, look at all of these monsters. Come on, all of you monsters, out of here. Everyone, out of this room.
And additionally, at level 10 or above, they can go here to grab the Azat Sword, the best weapon in the game, already. In the early PC versions anyway, every character can pick up their very own Azat Sword. And oh yeah, there's still a third party to worry about. Once it's finally February 1st, we get our first crushing day of Salvan, and the music changes again. Though this day is 10 times as long as a normal one, it's going to take some effort to get this party up to a similar level to your other 2. One trick you can do is walk up against an object like a mountain, which will make the game keep bringing up a message saying, "You can't move here." But while doing this, no time will pass, and yet you can still get attacked. So this is useful for leveling without using any time. You get to the first dungeon of the game by flying up here to an island. Press the spacebar to fly at any time, as long as you have at least one winged character in your party. My parties were all designed to have at least one. So as with most first-person dungeons from this era, you're going to get pretty lost without a map. A lot of the dungeons even have invisible passages and warps, so you're in for a hard time. The game does actually have an auto-mapping feature built in, but it's a special technique that only some monsters can use. If your current party doesn't have the technique, then you're just going to have to wait until it's the next party's turn. So a preferable option nowadays is just to use a map online. There are maps for most of the game on this walkthrough for the FM Towns version. For maps of the remaining ones, look for a scan of this so-called Last Armageddon Ura Manual 2, published by Comptique magazine. The dungeons each have required events, which are completely invisible. You have to stand on a certain space to find them. So what does our party of courageous mutants find here in the first dungeon?
We don't like the word mutants, Homer. We prefer freaks or monsters.
Well, at the first event they find some kind of data disk, but with nothing to play it on, they just have to take it with them. And at the much more interesting second event, they find cold storage chambers, with a human mummy clutching a journal inside. The journal's final entry says that the human decided to go into cold sleep in order to wake up someday after the world has become habitable again. The monsters laugh at the human's foolishness. He actually thought he would wake up someday in a better world? So that's it for this dungeon. After some more leveling, if necessary, you can go back to that alien ship. One of the events here is a player for that disc we found earlier. The disc says that humans collected all of their knowledge in a place called the Tower of No Return. They don't want whoever comes next to make the same mistakes that they did, so they'd like them to see their history and laugh at their mistakes. The monsters decide that it can only benefit them to learn the knowledge the humans left behind. But the disc also says that only those who seek all knowledge and who possess the key of Garma may enter the tower. And luckily, the next event in the spaceship is the Book of Garma, which turns the monster's keycard into the key of Garma. The next event, though, is a message from the aliens, taunting them and letting the monsters know that they've gone ahead to the Tower of No Return first. They want to see just how far the monsters can get, and so they dare them to follow. "Those damn aliens are looking for a fight," says Gargoyle. "We'll kill every last one of them," remarks Goblin. The Tower of No Return is easy enough to find on the map, but in order to enter, you'll need not only the key of Garma, but you'll also need to find all 108 of the stone tablets scattered about the world. Now, this is one of the most infamous parts of the game, mostly because the game gives you no indication of which tablets you've found so far. So a common technique was marking each of them off on a map included with the game. I opted to just mark them off using a paint program instead. I was super worried that I was going to somehow miss one or get game over after finding one without saving my game, but somehow it all worked out. I found them all without incident and entered the tower. Once inside, you can't leave. The tower has 7 floors, and on each one of them you have to find a crystal which will transform your current key into the key to the next floor. A visual event on each floor presents a different section of history, each interpreted in about the most pessimistic light possible. For instance, first it's the dinosaurs, who became the dominant species for too long, got bored, and chose to go extinct on purpose. Then in the tale of Noah from the Bible, he hogged all the wood so that no one else could build an ark, and only begrudgingly allowed his family to come too. Animals were brought along only for food. Up on the 5th floor, it's the far future year of 1999, when the monsters came. The monsters preyed upon the humans and taught them the true meaning of despair. "That's ridiculous," says Minotaur. "How can we have wiped out the humans? We were stuck in the underworld the whole time." "There's something strange about this tower," remarks Harpy. "It's like we were meant to see all of this." The next floor talks about the few humans who survived but had given up hope for the future. They spent their time dreaming up stories of 12 races of evil monsters and the gods who would defeat them. "What the hell is this?" says Gargoyle. "Were we dreamed up by humans or created just to be sacrificed to their gods? And yet, here we are, alive right now." But the message also says that on the final floor lies the true enemy, and whoever defeats it will rule the earth. And here I think I'll put a spoiler warning, though I have a feeling those really worried about spoilers have stopped the video already. Trust me, the really juicy stuff starts here. On the final floor is a doorway with a bright light behind it. A voice tells them that humans became too intelligent and they had nothing left to do but disappear. Also, it was not really the monsters who killed the humans, but rather the monsters that existed in human hearts. It's time now for the monsters to enter the real world and not repeat the mistakes of the humans. And so the monsters emerge onto the Earth's surface for the very first time. The world below, which they thought was the surface, was actually underground, and the tower was an elevator between the two worlds. And so the second half of the game begins in an all-new overworld, with new music for the battles, each of the parties, and the menus. Here, first you want to find the Stone Tablet Manufacturing Facility for another first-person dungeon. There, the monsters find a device which allows them to travel back and forth between the true overworld and the underground overworld from the first half of the game. I found this useful mostly for exiting dungeons. Then later in the factory, they find the tablet-making machine. It explains how the tablets were made, and most interestingly, the fact that they are only made on the first of each month, which creates strange atmospheric conditions which humans couldn't survive. So that's the origin of the crushing day of Salvan. Next, they find the 109th tablet in the middle of being created, which says that there are still some humans left in a place called Fantasyland, but only those who possess a true human heart may enter. You can find Fantasyland on the overworld, and indeed, it won't let you in. You have to first visit 4 different human ruins scattered about the world: a church, a hospital, a police station, and a department store. These dungeons are played in a normal overhead perspective rather than first person. Throughout them are some objects to find. Each one will cause one of the monsters to regain their ancient memories, as well as their love and compassion. For instance, Giant Snake finds a mural of a snake in a church and realizes that some humans worshipped snake gods. Gargoyle finds an actual stone gargoyle. Goblin finds a book of fairy tales that has goblins in it, and Androsphinx sees a photo of the Great Sphinx of Giza. Finding each of these objects is the other really infamous part of the game. The right character has to be alive in your current party when you find each one. This means that the Salvan Day party will have to find all of their objects in one day, which is pretty doable with a walkthrough, but would have been pretty difficult without one. On top of that, most players won't have leveled up their Salvan Day party high enough to take on the enemies here, and will have to rely on saving and loading in order to fudge their way around. Luckily, I had actually leveled mine up quite a bit, and they were pretty capable. After I thought I had found all 12 objects, my worst fears were realized when I found that I still couldn't enter Fantasyland. Somehow, I had managed to miss one of the objects and had no choice but to go back and find each one again. Fortunately, the one I was missing was one of the first ones I went back to. It was Gargoyles, which I was sure I had already seen. Somehow I had managed to not save my game after finding it and then loaded my data. And I thought I was being careful not to do that. Anyway, finally I could enter Fantasyland. Inside, we find weapon, armor, and tool shops, but you can't buy anything. The shopkeepers just say, "Welcome, how can I help you?" And outside, the monsters run into a party of adventurers who say that they're on a quest from the king to defeat the Dark Lord and save the princess. They fight with our party, and after being defeated, it turns out that they were only robots. And we then find a hospital where robots are being repaired. So the monsters are pretty sure at this point that there are no humans left after all, but decide to go see the king in the castle. It's another first-person dungeon where, deep inside, they find the king. He tries to give our party 100 gold so that they can start off on a quest to save his daughter, but he of course too is only a robot. Deeper in the castle is the main computer, who is an actual AI they can talk to. We learn here that Fantasyland is the AI's attempt to create humanity's dream world based on the data they left behind. "This is humanity's dream world," says the orc, "just repeating the same simple predetermined actions every day?" This is a scathing criticism of gamers that may be even more relevant today. But anyway, since the monsters found all those objects earlier and regained some of their memories, they now have a few hunches about their own true nature. They ask the AI if they are the reincarnations of the humans, and if then their memories as the monsters are all fabrications. And while the main computer doesn't know, it determines that their emotions are even more human than human. It shuts down and prints out a paper which reads, "Reporting to the control tower. Mission accomplished. The rulers of the next era have been born," and it includes a passcode to enter the control tower. The control tower is a winding 4 floors filled with invisible warps, and there's nothing to find except the final goal on the last floor. There's no boss. This game doesn't have bosses. There's just a single room to enter which shows the ending. The monsters see only a dark void, where the shaman's pot falls and shatters, releasing the other 2 resting parties. The monsters are surrounded by a hot, burning light, and soon in their place remains nothing but 12 naked humans. Below them, they see a beautiful planet, filling them with a calming nostalgia. A voice welcomes them and explains that this is their planet. The gentle voice is one of the aliens, who tells them that when the humans had lost hope, they began a project to recover their lost humanity. They separated their souls from their bodies and had them fight each other. The aliens were the souls and were known as gods, and their empty bodies were monsters. All of this world up until now wasn't real. There was never a lower world or a monster world below that. But in the fighting, if the monsters could recover their human emotions, they would be reunited with their souls and reborn as the new humanity. This was all in order to prevent humans from making the same mistakes over again the next time. 12 humans with no memories awaken in a green field. They comment on the beautiful weather and how they're hungry. One of them remarks that they've got a lot to do. And of course, they name this planet Earth. And that's it. The very short list of credits scrolls by. A couple of ports of the game were developed alongside the PC-88 version. One of them was for the Sharp X1 and released the following month. This one is almost identical to the original except for the title logo. But the real upgrade here is the music. When played with the CZ8BS1 soundboard or on an X1 with one built in, you get a stereo FM soundtrack, which is a huge improvement over the crappy monaural arrangements on the PC-88 soundboard too, though I'm still not particularly crazy about the sounds they used. The game also does run a bit slower than it does on an 8MHz PC-88 since X1s only go up to 4MHz. The other version originally planned, along with the PC-88 and X1 versions, was for the MSX2, which was probably released around the same time. This one is graphically pretty close to the original PC-88 version for an MSX game, and is compatible with the FM pack for the sound. It sounds terrible without one. It was also the first one to add a monster guide built into the game. Despite how cruel and difficult the game was, Last Armageddon was a hit. These initial 3 versions sold really well, and so Brain Gray began the process of porting the game to a bunch of other systems. The X68000 version came out the following year. It's the first version to have the graphics majorly redrawn for both the cutscenes and the game. It looks much better than the previous versions, but is overall still a bit underwhelming for an X68000 game. This one has slightly better sounding stereo FM arrangements, despite using the same sound chip as the X1. Next came the FM Towns version, which was the first version on CD-ROM, and given the title Last Armageddon CD Special. This one has an arranged CD soundtrack, but it sounds rather MIDI-ish. Since many of the tracks have sort of a metal feel to them, it would have been really nice to hear a real guitar or two, though I understand that hiring and recording real musicians is expensive, and was especially so back then. Voices have also been added for every one of the visual scenes. Due to the huge amount of Redbook CD audio tracks necessary for the voices and music, the game came on 3 discs, each which actually contained all the game data. The game has a low memory and high memory mode depending on how much RAM you have. The low memory mode has less animation in the opening. The graphics seem to be mostly based on the X68000 version, but with the overworld and dungeons given a lot more detail. Strangely, rather than using the keyboard, this one can only be controlled using the FM Towns controller, which is an improvement anyway. The game also features an in-game manual so that the included paper one could be shortened. The PC-98 version was released way after the PC-88 version, in 1990, and despite that, it's shockingly unchanged from the PC-88 original. Since the music uses 3 SSG and 3 FM channels, it sounds more similar to the Soundboard 1 version of the PC-88 soundtrack. And in the same year, the first console version of the game was released, for the PC Engine. In this one, they made the overhead graphics quite a bit nicer, with bigger characters and a bit more animation. And in fact, the dungeons were all changed to use the same overhead view as well in this one. There are no more first-person dungeons. And guess what? Bosses were added too. As for that annoying part where you had to find all 108 stone tablets in the original, here it's been reduced to only 12 red ones that you have to find. Another notable difference is that you can't make your own parties, they're predetermined. The music is mostly the same arranged soundtrack from the FM Towns version, but with some added tracks. Most of the cutscene audio has been changed to ADPCM to save disk space. Oh yeah, and the cutscene graphics are based on the ones from the X68000 and FM Towns versions. Overall, this is probably the most playable and forgiving version of the game that was ever released. But there was still one final console version that came out shortly after, for the original Famicom. It was the only version of the game that wasn't developed by BrainGray themselves. This one obviously had to have all the graphics completely redone, and not only that, they changed all the music to new tunes as well. The first-person dungeons are back in this one though. Overall, I'm not a huge fan of this version. On the Famicom it feels like some kind of cheap Final Fantasy imitation or something. However, this is the only version which has an English patch. I guess there was an earlier patch that was all machine translated, but I've heard the current one is a lot better. And finally, I want to mention that there was sort of a sequel to Last Armageddon in 1994, made by Ijima's company Pandora Box on the Sega Mega CD. It was titled After Armageddon Gaiden. While not a direct sequel, it's similar thematically and in how the character building works. Hey, this looks kind of fun. I want to play this one. I love RPGs from this era. But supposedly, it also has a lot of balance issues, and the story is not as compelling as that of the original. Last Armageddon is a fascinating mess. The in-game graphics are a little ugly, the sound in the PC-88 version is sloppy, and the controls clunky. And while I actually felt like I was having a good time with the character building near the beginning, it's ultimately too grindy and unbalanced. Would I recommend you play it for yourself? Definitely not, but if you must, probably stick to the PC Engine version. But, as you've seen in this video, the main draws of this game were the cool monsters, the gratuitous gore, and most of all, the dark storyline which was truly epic in scale. I know for sure, it's a game I won't soon forget. Thanks for watching this episode of PC-88 Paradise. This video was a request from my longtime patron, JP Wentz. Seriously, thanks for making me play this one, because I probably wouldn't have otherwise. And as always, a huge thank you is due to all of the other patrons and YouTube members currently scrolling by on your screen. Thanks for watching, and I'll see all of you in the next one.